and I'm joined by my Haptics crew, Ashley from Titan Haptics, Manu from Unity, and Brian from SensorGlobe. The Haptics Club is a team of people that have a passion for haptics. Our goal is to raise awareness of the amazing tech and people in haptics and to foster interesting discussion on the subject. Today, we have a very special guest, David Resnick. David is involved with the Walt Disney Company as a senior product design manager, focusing on interactive and gaming for Disney+, Hulu, ESPN+. He is a multisensory creator involved in developing and creating immersive, interactive, and engaging products for a broad audience across Disney's streaming platform. He's also a mentor, speaker, and a workshop leader specializing in human-computer interaction, design thinking, and empathy through technology, including at various institutions including UC Irvine, UCLA, TEDx, and the National Stuttering Association. Before we jump into today's episode, we'd like to share today's sponsor, Gravius. Gravius develops a wide range of acoustic sensors and acoustic for all types of industries and applications. Make sure to check out Gravius, and thanks again for sponsoring the episode. Also, be sure to visit thehapticslab.com and check out our latest blog post, featuring articles from your favorite haptician, and take a peek into our upcoming guests. You can also pick some slick swag, like the shirt on a mug, at our store, thehapticsclub.com/shop. So, David, welcome to the Haptics Club. Welcome, and we are really happy to have you here. Can you introduce a little bit yourself and share how you started with haptics?
Yeah, hey Eric, and hi everybody. I want to offer a few disclaimers first. The first is that I am a person who stutters, so as folks who are listening hear that, that is just how I talk. It's not a glitch in the recording. The second thing is that I work at Disney, but I'm not here as a representative of the company. So everything that I am talking about and expressing are my own opinions. And the third, which maybe is the most interesting and exciting, is that I am just really thrilled and honored to be here and talking. I joked around maybe a year ago in talking to a couple colleagues, like, hey, if I ever make it on the Haptics Club podcast, I know I'm a success. I'm not joking. Like, I really said that. So it really is cool that I'm here and talking.
You're setting the bar really, really high right now. So it will be difficult.
And please feel free to jump in and ask me questions or change it as I talk about my history and past. I have not had a straight path in terms of my education and career and such. So I'm going to take you through a number of different areas. And to me, it starts in the summer of going into ninth grade. I was really into sports. I was kind of a jock, and I had to choose an arts elective, a class that I would take, in ninth grade. And I'd heard that the easiest class is the survey of music class. So, okay, I'm going to take that. Then I arrive in ninth grade, and there's a new teacher who's coming in from a conservatory background, really accomplished as a composer. I'm like, and he played us a piece of music that was Samuel Barber's Adagio for strings. Some people have heard it in the soundtrack to the movie Platoon. It's this really long, slow string piece that is building and building and crescendo. And as I heard this piece of music, I had like a spiritual experience of a euphoric feeling in my body, in my mind. I should mention as well that I do have synesthesia, So this music was just really firing all of my neurons in my brain. And at that instant, I decided I'm going to recreate this experience for other people. So I became a musician. I became a composer. I toured in bands, a producer, engineer. Um, but I was not able to recreate that kind of a feeling for others because I had synesthesia, and most people out there don't. So that started a foray into a career as a VJ. That's someone who plays live visuals at concerts, at festivals, art museums, and I toured all over as a VJ for Diplo and the Wu-Tang Clan, and I played all the major festivals, art museums in New York at the installations at the Whitney, and really focusing on this combination of music and and the visual again to try and elicit that response in people of being totally immersed in a euphoric experience. And again, it didn't quite hit how I wanted it to. People got really into it. They really enjoyed the experiences. They were entranced, but didn't quite hit that the level of immersion that I was going for. The next step, I started a grad school program at UC Irvine. That was called Arts, Computation, Engineering. And it was there that I was exposed to vibrating motors. And I'm like, hey, like this is turning on a part of my brain that music and the visual it did not. So I started experimenting. I took apart a foot a massager, thinking I could hack it. Don't do that. Do not take apart a foot massager. I got electrocuted horribly. Don't recommend it. But in that program, I got deep into cognitive neuroscience and aspects of embodied and embedded consciousness, and it built up to inventing and building two multi-sensory instruments. I had this idea of being a vibrationist, to play the whole body and mind as an instrument.
And how many years back was this one?
This was a while ago. This was like 2009 through 2011. And it was really cool. The second instrument I built, my advisors were like, it's weird. It's not going to do anything. I built these kind of acupressure fingers using solenoids, and I hacked a Kinect camera. And in those days, they didn't have a lot of tools for doing that easily. There was a lot of parsing of raw data. And I incorporated a biofeedback loop, and I wrote a generative music program, and all of it responded to the movements of a vibrationist. So essentially, as they are gesturing in the air, they conducted a haptic sound and biofeedback experience. And I put the advisor up there into the experience after it was all done. And after it was done, he was like, David, I had no idea. And so that really told me I was on to something new and special, that I could induce a feeling of being totally transported into a flow state, into a place of being immersed in a artistically artistically intentional experience.
Right.
Yeah.
This is super interesting because, first of all, I don't believe I ever heard of a story like this. And secondly, is that this story it's wonderful because it had both you directing live the experience and then the audience that was feeling it. So it was much more near a music play. It was much more in your chords, right? And in
Right.
this moment, we welcome Manuel, that is the second host of the Haptics Lab that just joined. Hey, Manuel.
Hi, David. Hi, Eric. Happy to be here
Hey,
with
Manu.
you guys.
We're nice because we just finished the intro part of David and it just sharing with us
awesome.
the fantastic his haptic discovery stories, and we can pass maybe to our area of expertise one. So,
Yeah.
David, you are an interactive design with an interactive sector, right? You just shared your origin story that you created this interactive experience where you were directing the music. Was that the core that brought you to follow this as a career path? What happened later? What brought you to become an interactive designer?
Yeah. I basically took two paths after grad school. The available jobs were in the area of designing software and apps and those kinds of things. And that was all a part of my education as well, and some background earlier in working in media. So I followed a trajectory of becoming, a UX and product designer, getting to work on larger and larger scale products in terms of the audiences that I was reaching, learning a lot about developing and leading teams, business strategy, all the elements that you need to, succeed in the area of product development at consumer and enterprise companies. All the while, like I'm continuing on the multisensory stuff. I was a part of a performance group that was called 7 Star Sun, where I'm doing 3D projection mapping, and interactive dance and projecting on dancers and all that kind of stuff. I co-founded a non-profit called Stutter Social, the world's largest online community for people who stutter. We host support groups across 75 countries, developing my interest in community and in spreading empathy for others. And I'm talking about all this because it ties back to joining Hulu in 2018. And in shortly after I had joined, I have 2 young children, and a shout out to them, Avalon and Elias, who've really helped me a lot on my journey, and my wife as well, Dana. The kids are asleep in the next room. I'm in the living room. I'm watching TV. I have the volume down because I didn't wake them up. Any of the parents out there know you don't want to wake up a sleeping child. Like, just let them be. And I've got the subtitles on. And there was some kind of a big dramatic thing happening on screen. And all it said in the subtitles was dramatic music playing. I have people in my family who are deaf and hard of hearing, and I'm like, that must not be a great experience for my Uncle Larry or my cousin Paul. And that kind of set off a connection in my brain of all this stuff that I had done in haptics earlier, all the stuff that I had continued to do in building emotional connections and multi-sensory things. And I'm like, what if we, put haptics to video content? And then I ended up doing a hackathon project at Hulu. It won the award for most innovative, where I haptified a variety of clips of content, and it was really, really cool. Everyone, what was awesome is, I developed it as an iPhone app, so you could put it out in the company on the test flight, and everyone got to actually experience it in their hands. Because haptics is something you have to experience on your own in your body. You can't see haptics on a screen, so it was super powerful for all these employees across the company to feel this and experience like, oh, there's something really, really interesting here.
That's wonderful. And were you in a team or were you alone developing these hackathon activities?
I started out alone. I mean, prior to the hackathon, I was like, okay, I need to see if my idea has merit, and if I'm actually solving the problem that I think exists. And I grabbed a 10-second clip of a lightsaber battle from Star Wars, and I hand coded in Xcode haptics to it, and I was like, okay, like this is cool. And I used that to attract and to recruit others onto a hackathon team, including an amazing engineer who became a longtime collaborator in my efforts, whose name is Bryce Horwood. So it was definitely a team effort in that hackathon.
I love that because it's almost like Star Wars. It's an anonymous geek world that everybody can relate to, and it's a great way to kind of just get some attention from people and want to play with it. And then, by the way, I have a more grandiose idea behind the last the saber. I was just there to attract you to get to play with it. And I guess after that, then you finally got a bigger team and were able to actually pursue the idea.
Exactly.
It's amazing.
Thanks, David. It was a great story. So I would like now to talk a little bit about some design process advices that you could share with our audience. I imagine that in your career, as you mentioned, you're not here as a Walt Disney Company employee, you're here as a David Resnick and a haptics passionate. And so within your years, without talking about the specific project, or if you want to talk with the project, what you can talk about, of course, what are some key advices that you would like to share with our haptics listener or anybody else about what is a successful way to run a design process or a design guidelines for haptics experiences? What would be some key learnings?
I'm really happy that you're asking this question because I got a chance to develop a process that is known but really is still pretty, quote, cutting edge. And it's called co-design. And by the way, I want to shout out, I was on this inclusive design team at Disney, in Disney streaming. Maeve, Houston, who founded that team. Huge influence, and really opened our eyes to inclusive design thinking and co-design. And my colleagues as well, who developed it in tandem, David Goldberg, Chelsea Solomita, and Samaya Sinha. Co-design is where you invite your customers or your users in as partners, as opposed to participants. So typically, let's say that you're working on a haptics project, you might design a haptics experience, and then you bring in a participant and you say, try this, and then tell us about your reactions. In co-design, you're inviting in the participant as an expert, as a partner. And in our case, I won't give the details on the project, but it was a co-design study involving people who are deaf and hard of hearing. So they definitely have a lot of expertise for their experience of the world that I don't have as a hearing person. And by inviting them in as a partner in co-design, you can put certain tools into their hands to let them tell you how it should be. An amazing insight that came out of this study that we did is there was a participant who told us, we were showing them a clip of a National Geographic documentary. He's like, I never knew that whales made a sound, because he the subtitles never explained that a whale is making a sound. But there's this whole rich universe of expression that he never even knew existed, because no one told him and no one asked. So you can imagine, if you're doing a study, a co-design study, if you're working on haptics for automotive, you bring them in. Let's say the study is happening in a car, right? So you put them in that environment. You say, okay, if the car is going off the road, how should it feel to for haptics to indicate, hey, you're going off the road? And you could put instruments in their hands, for example, musical instruments, in particular percussion instruments, which anybody can hit a drum or shake a tambourine. These instruments have a variety of textures and allow for a dynamic expression from even a novice. So you could sit them in a car. You put a bunch of instruments in there and say, how should it feel when the car goes off the road? And maybe they're taking a drumstick and going bum, 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 bum. Then you put their hands onto a touch screen. Say, how should it feel if you're tapping on a volume control for the audio in the car? And you could hand them things to do a click, like that, or whatever else. So you're letting them tell you their expectations about the moments that haptics should happen and how those haptics should feel.
I have a question.
That is
I have 50,000 questions. Actually, the one, I think the most important one that I have, from my perspective, would be when you are mimicking something real, maybe it would be easy to expect that there would come patterns from the user, what they would expect haptics to be. But for things that are not real, for example, some danger with the seat, were you seeing patterns on, let's say, a clustering of how people were expecting haptic to be, or were kind of all over the place, were different types of grouping that motivated by different types of reasons? Can you expand on it?
Question.
I have a lot of insights that I would love to share. I'm trying to think of how I can kind of abstractify them, so I'm not uh, divulging anything that is confidential. There were definitely patterns, and there were patterns that we did not expect. Especially as you are involving people whose lived experiences are different from yourself. Like you get you hear and see, and you get that feedback, very unexpected things, um, and we actually heat mapped the responses, and you can really see there was a pattern correlation between about 80 and 90% of the time. So there were definite patterns there. And again, a lot of them were unexpected as researchers.
Okay, so that's just to rephrase what you say, correct me if it's correct or wrong, is that even for interaction which were novel and new, in 80-90% of the time, you were seeing patterns or how users were expecting haptics to be, even if completely unexpected, so that you could not imagine that. But they actually came up with, which means that there is a sort of, or at least at your perspective, there is a sort of consistent way how human would co-design a haptic experience.
Hypothetically about haptics, I never said that. Um, uh, yeah, it kind of is amazing, isn't it? It kind of tells you can infer that there is something common about our brains and sensory organs, that
Yes.
even in this kind of largely unexplored area, there can be common experiences and patterns that emerge.
I am both amazed and also not necessarily surprised by that, because I've read about very similar experiences. There was this, I think it's Fantastic Fungi on Netflix that talks about mushrooms and experiences that people go through that are usually not experienced and well documented.
Paul Stamets, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think one of the interviewer were talking about the experience of going through hallucinogenic drugs, such as DMT, where people tend to see the same eerie face or body or colors and shapes that they would never see before in their life. And if you ask them to think about it before they do the experience, they would not say that. But every single person from different age group, different ethnicities, and so on, and cultures went through that same experience and all said the same things. And so people are obviously on the more spiritual aspect saying, oh, there must be something out there. And on a scientific side, people were saying, well, it just maybe just says that our brain has very similar patterns and recognize patterns in the world very similarly. And now, based on what you're saying, that makes me wonder if, like Eric was saying as well, that we would expect haptics to behave a certain way, even subjectively, even when it's abstract experiences and not tangible feelings that we know and feel, like drums and cars vrooming and so on. But something so abstract like in video gaming, now if you're basically able to test that with a small subset of people, maybe you could infer that that experience will or should be good for most human beings as you project and scale up.
Yeah, because I think comment on this because more over and over again, we had also some other speaker in this podcast that were sharing the otherwise experience. They were creating a haptic language and try to ask people to remember it or to learn it, which from what you're saying, it's not the wrong way, but the inefficient way to arrive there. Because if what you're sharing is correct, there is one optimal way for each interaction to be haptified. And first of all, you should be able to systematically identify what is the most common haptic pattern co-designed by people. And that is the optimal haptic experience for the specific perception that you want to deliver. And then that comes up from that.
I want to call out something though, and that is, it's like I really want to urge people not to think about a singular optimal experience, because a part of what co-design tells you, especially as you do it with a variety of people, like in our study, there were people who were deaf and hard of hearing and people who were not. That kind of heat mapped patterns I should have specified. They were more aligned per cohort. So the people who were deaf and hard of hearing had very aligned patterns. People who were hearing also had very aligned patterns. And there was a lot of overlap too, but not quite as much as in the individual cohorts. But the beauty of today's technology is that it could allow us to provide different, for example, hypothetically, haptics experiences for different people. You could, imagine, again, in the case of a car, you could have a setting there for, I want all the haptics. And this is just in games already. Like if you look at Spider-Man 2 on the PS5, you have a choice of like full immersion haptics or just like here and there, haptics. You can implement that based on your experiences in research, in co-design. Not saying, hey, here's the deaf and hard of hearing experience, but you say, here's the experience with haptics for everything, and here's something where you don't have as much. And because of the technology that we have now, like it's not hard to do that. So you can create, but of course it's extra effort. Although even there, with everything that's happening in AI, I feel like if someone went out there, and this could tie into a future of haptics, if there's someone out there, a group of teams who could kind of analyze haptic patterns based on specific needs for various use cases and types of people, you can create very personalized, optimized experiences across gaming, automotive, streaming, all kinds of experiences.
I love that because it feels like we're moving away from reactive UX to adaptive UX, where you could have interfaces that can, in real time, almost A/B test and provide the best experience per cohort or per user groups. I wanted to ask you, actually, through those experiences of creating with co-design in mind as a practice, do you have any project you could share with us that have significantly improved from a user experience perspective because you've practiced co-design?
Yeah. I'm going to go outside of the realm of Disney
Let's go.
into a personal project. And by the way, I want to shout out a phenomenal collaborator in the haptic space in a lot of work I've done at Disney and work I'm doing now outside. His name is Nick Arciero. Thank you, Nick, for everything. I'm the co-creator of an app called Breezy. And Breezy is a haptics app that is intended to help you shift your mind-body state through haptics. A drop of context on it. I had experienced kind of a traumatic event in my life, and I was feeling, just extremely emotionally intense, a lot of anxiety, and in a moment of desperation, almost. I don't know if people out there have tried it. If you're an Apple developer, you get access to their haptic palette app. So essentially, it's an app that you put on your phone to explore the variety and range. Oh, there it is. To explore the variety and range of haptics on the iPhone. I opened up the haptics palette app, and I placed it in the middle of my chest so that it resonates throughout your whole chest cavity and body. And I just started tracing. I started tracing patterns on the palette, and inside of a couple of minutes, I had come out of this, extreme emotional state.
Wow.
And I was like, whoa, that was very powerful and simple as well. And because of that, I'm like, I need to make that experience available to everybody. And I made the Breezy app out of Bryce Horwood and Nick helping as well. And in order to make that haptic experience as optimized as possible, I enlisted the help of others in a co-design process. In particular, the help of my children, Avalon and Elias, who are now 10 and 7.
They're the best
Avalon,
designers.
exactly. And also, in saying that I wanted this app to be available and helpful to everybody, kids were a definite audience that I wanted to address, because as a parent, I relate to the emotional regulation needs of children. And I said, hey, if this can, help them, it can help anybody. So I did an informal co-design process. I put the palette in their hands. I asked them, like, how would you use this if you're feeling anxious? How would you use this if you're having a hard time falling asleep? How would you use this if your mind is busy and racing and stressed out? And through that process and my own exploration of of trial and error and recording, and then you say, okay, like, either this is going to work or it won't, and you put it in the hands of people to try it out. And the result, I mean, not trying to toot my own horn, but yes, I'm tooting my own horn. The app has been really effective.
I can attest,
Even
because
just
I tested
a
it.
couple of days. Well, thank you. A couple of days ago, I found out that the school counselor at my kids' school had heard about it from Juan and Elias, and tested it out herself, and tested out with other students at the school, and it's now on her official tool sheet that goes out to the whole school and the
Wow,
parents
that's
as
amazing.
well, of saying, hey, if you're feeling emotionally dysregulated, here's a tool, the Breezy app, that can help you. And
Wow.
that was a huge accomplishment. It's like, wow.
Did you run any formal academic studies on this? Because
Not yet, no.
shall you shall, because if it's so effective and if it's helpful for emotional regulation and you can publish out of that, then it could become something that is routinely applied in many other places.
There are other haptics companies and technologies out there who are working in this space. Like, for example, Apollo in Neuro is fantastic. Like, I have a bracelet, I use it. The Breezy app is really intended for a bit of a different use case of a quick intervention. It's not intended for, you're using it all day, holding a phone that's vibrating on your chest. It's meant for, I have a few minutes of time. I'm going to use this as an intervention to help me. That being said, that the app is in use across a number of VA hospitals. That's hospitals that take care of veterans, um, a lot of whom have PTSD. I've heard from them that they are falling asleep for the first time in a normal hour in
Yeah.
a decade. I hear from new moms who wake up in the middle of the night and their baby is crying and stresses them out. They're able to use this and take care of themselves. I do think it would be great. Hey, if there's anyone out there who's working in academia who wants to do a study, I'm totally open. I would love that.
It's funny because the way I discovered this app was completely random from a friend from Tibet. And he was telling me about the stories of Tibetan monks and how they are using their om and their voice with a very deep vibration to calm babies. And I had a sister that just gave birth last year in October. Your app was out, I think, for a month. And I was just looking for a
Congratulations,
haptics
Uncle
experience.
Manu.
Thank you. And we tried the app and it worked on the baby. Which I think is not just good for making people feel asleep, but you categorize, I think, a few different use cases which are great, like clear your mind, relax, and so on. It's the only app on the App Store that I know that had only 5-star reviews, and there's more than 14 out there. So that says something. So I agree with Eric. There might be some secret research behind that you could be able to publish that can have a global impact.
From a product perspective, there are 1.4 billion iPhone out there. You don't need anything else, right? So there are many levels of product, and this is a distribution platform at the end of the day. So anything can be useful, and if this can be useful, I think you have the distribution. You don't need another device, which is a gigantic thing from my perspective. But said so, before going to the future of haptics, we usually like to ask one question to our interviewee, which is, what are the 3 most striking haptics experience you ever had, and why?
He did not pay me to say this. It's my honest opinion. Eric at Razer, I got to try out the combination of the Project Esther chair and cushion with the controller and the headphones at a GDC or anyway, some conference. And wow, that experience was so good. And I am a particular man. People call me like Technicality Dave or Particular Dave, because I know what is good. I really, I try to hone that. And this experience was it blew me away. The feeling of the transducers in the chair, how it's spatialized, the dynamic amplitude and frequency control of it, how you can have a different experience across the chair and the controller, and then something that is more subtle on your head, because you do have to be careful of things that are vibrating on the head. It can be awkward, but if you do it correctly and in tandem with these other aspects, man, just the playing of games, seeing haptified videos on there was just incredible. Loved it. Hands down, in my experience, like the best haptic experience that I've had so far.
Oh, wow. I will take this. We'll go to my boss and say, I need a raise now.
Yeah. He deserves it. He deserves it.
Too late. It's recorded.
Yes.
You're on camera. Thank you.
I love how the top 3 is just the 3 products together. That's the best review.
I asked for free.
For 3.
I mean, there was 3 components. That must work for something.
Oh, I wanted to talk about a haptic experience that has a tremendous amount of potential. I'm blanking on the name of the company. They'll have to forgive me. That they are in the haptics industry forum. That was how they contacted me. It's a company that has an electroactive fluid actuator. Do you remember their name, either of you?
Anyway,
actuator, electric.
We could put it in the notes afterward. So they send, a small amount of electrical current into the actuator that is, a kind of a bubble that is filled in this fluid, and it makes it vibrate because the fluid is reacting to the electrical current. And what was so interesting about that experience is that, in most haptics that vibrate, the outer shell of the thing that is vibrating is rigid. And in this case, it was like a gel. It's very soft. It's pliable. It conforms to the shape of a body, and it felt good. The biggest issue that they have is that the power supply for this thing is massive. But over time, I believe that they're going to bring it down. If they can figure out how to do that, it's a very compelling experience because it conforms to the body and has a different kind of a feel that's more organic because the material is, again, as I said, is not hard and rigid.
Is it Artemis Robotics? Maybe?
Artemis, that's
yes.
it.
Yes, it's them.
Yes.
That's number 2. You missed the third one.
Okay. Number 3. I mean, it's a cliche, but the DualSense
Fair enough.
controller, especially because it was kind of novel, the adaptive triggers on it really just feel incredible as you are pulling back the string on a bow and arrow, and you can feel that tension in the bow, like so connected to that experience in a game, and the emotional aspects that are connected to, oh, I'm pulling a bow hard and I can feel that tension in my hands. Is really just a great experience. It's very powerful. And as a 3A on there, I want to add in Apple's haptic engine, the transient haptics.
Yes.
Hello. It's
yes.
like, I mean,
shout out
you
to
can
Camille.
do some amazing shout out to Camille and team, especially the transient aspects of what that haptic engine does. I haven't really felt anyone else do that, and you can achieve a variety of haptics effects in that way.
Thank you, David. It was wonderful because you get a large breadth of experiences between new technologies, upcoming, and products, and why they were meaningful to you. So I think it's great. I would like to go right now to the future of haptics section. We don't have a lot of time, but we would like to touch on to that. So we usually ask people, how do you see this market in 5 years from now? What do you think that would be the state of the market at that stage, and why? So, to you the floor.
A shout out to Ashley, who's not here,
yes.
but it is her favorite part of the podcast. It's usually her question. I listen to every episode. I do have to promote an upcoming version 2 of the Breezy app, where we are incorporating meditations. A lot of people are using the Breezy app as they have on a guided meditation on YouTube. We said, well, how can I solve that problem and make it easier? So I actually have a background as a teacher in meditation. I didn't talk about it, but it's this whole other aspect. So I crafted, to tie it to the question, I believe there's a big opportunity for the emergence of a new form of expression that you could use in a utilitarian industry, or in health and wellness, or in gaming and media, and that is approaching multisensory creation with all the different aspects as a singular holistic unit, aka not having haptics as an add-on. So this whole experience of meditation is not just, here's a meditation that has sound and music and sound effects. Oh, and then I added haptics. The whole thing is crafted for the multisensory experience. And if you approach it in that kind of a way, the result is very different from what you would get otherwise. And so I'm really interested in seeing how that evolves and how others out there could take that approach to evolve new forms of multi-sensory experience. I'm also really interested in moving beyond the buzz. The vibro-tactile aspect is really, it's compelling, it's great. And how can we move to spatializing that, to actually shifting how you feel in a space, in a room? Maybe that applies in VR and AR. Maybe that applies in home theaters. By activating the various tactile elements of a space, I think it can open up a lot of worlds of experience. Other areas, very interested in seeing haptics develop as a form of communication. I heard you mention earlier about like haptics as a language. Really interested in that. Actually, in 2016, I developed a pitch for a competition at the United States Institute of Peace, and I conceived of a haptics a messaging app, and I pitched it under a framework of, imagine having two warring peoples in a conflict communicate solely through haptics. Like, what kind of empathetic responses could you elicit? What kinds of playful back and forth could you have? Because there is no, you're wrong, no, you're wrong, and you're a monster, and you've done horrible. Like, you can't say those things in haptics. You have to communicate in another kind of a way. And haptic communication could be so interesting because, this is just a theory. Haptics is such a native primal experience. It's the first sense that you develop in utero, as a fetus, is the sense of touch and feeling. So it hits a place in you that is very deep and raw. And if you can leverage that in communication, I think you could accomplish miracles.
David, this is fantastic. And your last answer just got me thinking we have to have you again on this podcast, because there's so much more question that I would like to ask. But sadly, this is obviously the end of the episode. But we want to thank you for joining us. For anyone listening, be sure to check out the hapticsclub.com and follow us on LinkedIn and X. And I want an amazing conversation starter. Pick up a Haptics Club shirt, mug, or hat on our store at thehapticsclub.com/shop. And of course, catch all of our amazing episodes on YouTube and on every major platform like Apple Podcast and Spotify. Big thank you to our listeners and supporters, and big thank you to you, David, and see you on the next episode.